can't help daydreaming of you, even as I do the things I do all day and night. Here in my room, I'm daydreaming.
Hello and welcome to this week's Happy Homestead with me, your hostess, Daiquiri Dusk. This week we'll be creating some special little treats designed to put the spring back in your husband's step, even after a long day at the office. For today's creation, you will need leatherette for your lining, buckram for your inner layer, a choice of different patterned and sequined fabrics for the outer layer, sequins for trimming around the edge, scissors, glue brushes, a selection of stencils, some fringing and some bows for decoration, some hair slides, and your glue. Now, the first step is choosing the size and shape of the pasties you wish to make. Once you've chosen, place the stencil on the buckram and draw around it. Cut out the shape that you've made. And use this to cut the shapes on your leatherette and your outer fabric. We're going to be using polka dot today. Don't worry about cutting too neatly around the outer fabric at this point, as we can tidy that up later. You now have your 3 pieces to make your pasties, your leatherette for the inner layer, the buckram for in the middle, and the polka dot for on the outside. You want to glue these together, beginning with the lining, add the buckram on top of that, and the polka dot on top of that, and place on a radiator or close to a window to dry. While your pasties are drying, it's time to choose the fringing, which will be used to make your tassels. You have 2 different ways of making tassels depending on the length of the fringing. If it's less than 3 inches long, you'll need to pull through the pieces and then cut them off. However, if you have longer fringing like this, it's a lot simpler. You can simply cut along the bottom to get the pieces to make your tassels. Once you've got your pieces, choose 15 to 20 of the lengths, depending on how big you want the tassel to be, and gather them up. Ensure the lengths are roughly equal, but don't worry too much, we can fix this later. And take a single piece of fringing, lay it flat, and place your 15 to 20 pieces on top. Tie the single piece in the middle in a double knot, and again about ½ inch up the fringe. Once you've got that, make sure all the lengths are roughly equal. If any of them are hanging at slightly different lengths, pull them through, and then take another single piece of fringing and place your tassel on top and tie a single knot around that before using the remaining piece of fringe to bind around the top of the tassel. Tie that into a double knot and you'll be left with a couple of little ends. Trim these and then use a fine glue brush to apply some glue and stick these loose ends down. Your finished tassel will look something like this. If need be, you can trim the bottom to even up the edges. Once your pasties have dried, take the base and cut approximately halfway up. At this point, we decide if we're going to make tassels or pasties. If you're making pasties, glue a narrow strip on the inside layer, fold the tassel over and fix with a hair slide and then leave it to dry. If you're making tassels, take the tassel and insert it into the pasty, apply a thin layer of glue to the under layer and affix with a hair slide. Pull the tassel right through and make sure the knot is sitting firmly at the back. And then taking a thin glue brush, apply a narrow layer of glue to the inner join and stick the remaining tassel down, and then leave it to dry. Now it's time for a quick cup of tea, don't you think? Let's see what's on the old goggle box, shall we?
So, that question again for the Bunny Boilers Soups and Hampers competition. Which one of these is not a member of the cat family? A panther, B, a tiger, or C, an Alsatian? All calls are charged at a premium rate, so please have your credit cards ready. Now, before we bring in the glamorous Dita Von Teese, we go out in the street to find your opinion on this resurgence of burlesque.
I think it's always been like a sexy thing, but it's never been crude. It's always been done tastefully.
I think it's kind of cool. I mean, as long as it's done correctly and not like in a pornographic kind of way, then it can be done pretty nicely and it can be pretty unique and interesting.
It's fun entertainment and whatnot, so I'm all for it. I think it's quite good.
I think it's a great thing for empowering women because most kind of the adult entertainment is made for men, but I think burlesque kind of empowers women because they have the control over it, and it's a lot more about suggestion as opposed to kind of just bearing everything.
Well, that was some very interesting views from you lot there. Now we're going to hear from a leading expert on burlesque. Please welcome to the studio, Miss Von Teese. Again, I'm so sorry about what happened backstage. I had no idea you were just undressing.
Well, that's enough time for them to have finished drying. Let's go and add the finishing touches, shall we? Now, once your bases have dried, we're going to trim around the edge now. Remove the hair slide and cut carefully around the edge of your pasties to make them an even circle. Don't worry if they're not perfect at this point, as this can be disguised in the next step. Now, if you're making pasties rather than tassels, this is the point where you affix your decoration in the middle. Simply take your little bow, or whatever you've chosen, apply some glue to the back and press it onto the centre of the pasty. This could then be left to dry. Now, on to the final stage, which is decorating around the edge. I've got a selection of trims here, but today we're going to go with white sequins. So take your pasty base and your little glue brush and apply a thin layer of glue all the way around the edge. Leave a little gap at the bottom just now, just so that your tassel doesn't get stuck, and leave that for a couple of minutes until it gets tacky. Then take your sequin trim and gently press it on around the edge of the pasty base. Take your little glue brush and apply a last little bit of glue to the gap you left earlier. And stick the sequins all the way around. So take a little loose end there and just snip that off. Pull any loose sequins off, et voila, your finished tassels. As you can see, there are lots of possible variations for your tassels. Different kinds of fabric, different colours of sequins, using braid for a trim, or perhaps some crystals, or if you're feeling particularly adventurous, you can make fully crystal tassels. So feel free to be as creative as you like. Next week we'll be working on more crafty treats, but until then, keep a happy home.
Your face, your eyes of blue, I'm daydreaming.